Hey, welcome everybody for another episode of Business Resilience in the New Normal. I am so excited. This is episode number 2. Episode number 1 was fantastic. We talked about telecommunication solutions, and we're going to talk about something else today. So, in case if you haven't had a chance to look at the first episode, let me introduce myself. My name is Flavia Fongang, and I'm a brand strategist and the founder of Three Colors World. People know me for different things, speaker, mentor, but today's not about me. And I have with me, I'm not by myself again, I'm with Nick Hein, the principal of Hein Legal. And obviously, if you don't know Nick Hein, you're probably not aware of how powerful he is in the world of the law. And Nick Hein, thank you for being here. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you very much. Yes.
Would you like to present yourself? Because I know you very well, but I would love people to know who you are, because if they don't know you, now it's time for them to know you.
Okay, so my name is Nick Hein, and I'm founder of Hein Legal. We're a specialist employment law boutique which advises companies and individuals on the diverse range of employment issues. And we've been pretty busy through this crisis, helping companies, particularly with their employees.
I can imagine you must be not only busy right now, but also what will happen afterwards. Because we look at companies, and for me, from a branding point of view, I've looked at companies, how well they behave with their employees, good or bad. And we've seen a lot of things differently, whatever it is, British Airways, Virgin, it will also damage the brand. So I don't know how you feel about that and that general just point of view.
Well, I do sympathise with that, but I think what I'm finding certainly is that companies are beginning to realise that, look, we're in a difficult situation. Even if things start to come back towards normal, it's going to be at least 6 to 12 months before they're up to where they were before the lockdown, and maybe even longer. And the difficulty is that the furlough scheme is there as a sort of prop to help companies maintain their staff, albeit on 80% of their pay or £2,500 a month.
Yes.
But a lot of them are realising that when the furlough scheme ends, and I know the government has just extended it till October, however, there'll be further guidance coming out at the end of May, because they're expecting companies to start contributing from August. But what they're realising, companies is that they're not going to need all these people or be able to afford to pay them. And some companies can start to get back to normal, others still haven't yet, and waiting for further government guidance, particularly in the entertainment and events sector. So a lot of companies are thinking, well, I'm sorry, but we need to take steps now to make cuts, reduce headcount, and to really make the business slim and lean, so that it's best to move ahead once they can start to get back to normal and customers and orders return.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the element of you want to protect your employee, but at the same time, your employees, but at the same time, you're not a charity. So you need to make tough decisions in a fair way.
I mean, the difficulty is they're helping with the payroll now, but that's going to run out come the end of July, or partially run out. And the question is, well, if they don't get on with it now, if they want to effectively reduce headcount, they could use some of the furlough period to help pay for some of those notices. I know it sounds a bit callous, but help pay for some of that notice period that otherwise will have to pay fully themselves when the furlough scheme ends.
Yes. All right. That brings me to the first question. How should company? I think you kind of answered it already.
I think companies need to be planning ahead, looking at their headcount. What are they going to need? How do they deal with their employees? And do they need to retain the number they've got?
Can I ask you a question? So, have you been helping your clients, with this situation? How have you helped them in terms of guidance?
Well, basically, we help them really understand what they need to achieve, the numbers of redundancies or a number of headcount reductions, and then we put in place a plan and a process to do that. So, for example, I'm dealing with quite a well-known hotel in London at the moment. They've got about 250 employees on furlough. They're realising, even when they begin to open up again, that they're not going to get the same number of customers for quite some time, and therefore they are going through a collective process at the moment to unfortunately reduce probably about 90 to 100 employees.
Oh my goodness, tough choices. Can imagine how to do that. So next question, how can they improve and maintain business continuity whether or not? I think again you answered this question as well on that case, which is extremely important, is looking at not only at the situation right now, but also how can you plan ahead? Because I think, as you said, clearly is that this element of we're waiting. But actually, you shouldn't be waiting. You should really take action in terms of the new normal is not going to be back to where you were before. And obviously, people, the situation of the amount of customers that you will get is, again, as you mentioned, certain industries have been hit harder than others. What you should look at. I don't know if you want to add something to that, Nick.
Really, it's, I'm sure a lot of businesses are doing their planning, finances, cash flow, working ahead. But, it is looking at their headcount and how they're using their staff and what they're really going to need. And unfortunately, I remember on the television news the other night, a caravan park owner in Cornwall was saying, well, look, whilst the scheme's here, the reality is we haven't had any income coming in for months. We're not going to get it for a while. Unfortunately, we don't need these employees despite the furlough system to help us, and we need to take action now about it.
Yes, absolutely. I think this element as well, if you look at, I just wanted to mention as well, companies, big companies, you look at people as numbers. There's this element that we want to stay human and, take care of our employees, and this element of looking at, the numbers where we are right now, and we look at employees and we're trying to find the balance. How do you find, how do you advise clients in terms of, you don't want to be too ruthless, but at the same time, you need to make tough decisions in terms of probably the communication around that? Is this something that
yes, because I mean that's a difficult one. I mean, as you've mentioned, British Airways, Ryanair, Virgin, they've all realised, and TUI now, they've all realised that they need to reduce headcount. I think going about the consultation the right way, the collective consultation process, if you're making more than 20 redundant in a 90-day period, you have to elect representatives, you have to go through a communication consultation process. Hopefully, if that's done in a sensible manner, employees will understand. They may not like it, but they will understand. And it's how people treat them and how they have treated them during the furlough period. Some have tried to treat them as numbers, as you say. I've had one saying they furloughed somebody and wanted them to do some work at the same time. When the employee challenged this,
that's not how it works.
Well, if you don't do that, we'll fire you. So, employers treat it in a different way. And I think the way that employers have handled this will determine, I think, how long people stay after the lockdown is unlocked. Things go back to normal. Because they won't really want to stay at a place where they didn't feel valued and they weren't treated properly.
Definitely. From an employer point of view, when is the best time to come and speak to a lawyer like you?
As early as possible. So before you're thinking of, when you're thinking you need to do it, the question then is, how many and what do you need to do? And we sort of can guide them from the outset. If they start themselves and then they get into difficulties, that's where it's likely to lead to employment tribunal claims and problems.
Yes.
So the earlier they know what they need to do, okay, this is what we need to do. How do we go about doing it in the right way, which will minimize the risk of claims and problems down the line?
Absolutely. I think that brings back to, that leads me to my next question, which was, how do you help your clients? And he's probably, he's clearly answered that, is when you guys are at the point where you're trying to think about your headcount and the forecast of your turnover, then come and speak to your lawyer as soon as possible to make sure that you do the right things and you don't say the wrong things either, to avoid, further repercussions.
Yeah, so really from the outset of this sort of lockdown, people were worried about what they do with their staff, etc. And so we were helping them with that. Then we had the introduction of the furlough scheme, the self-employed scheme, and other support that the Chancellor made. That led to a lot of questions and answers. How does this work in practice? We've had a raft of different guidance come through, and still coming through, actually. There's one today come through about employees on holiday during furlough and how you deal with that. And so we've been providing guidance articles and support for businesses throughout this process to try and make sure they're taking advantage of these this assistance that's been provided and doing it in the right way.
Yes. And I must say, I'm receiving a newsletter and I read them all the time because they're very useful. So if you're not, if you check out Hein Legal, Hein Legal website, they have a great newsletter, provides some very fantastic.
Yeah, you can sign up to our newsletter on Hein Legal, www.heinlegal.com. We'll send them out on a regular basis.
Yes, perfect. All right, do we have a sound? So what can businesses learn post-COVID-19? Is there anything else you want to add?
Well, I think, one of the main things I think business is going to learn is home working. And the fact that actually it has worked and has probably worked far better than most people envisaged. So this flexible working from home, as long as you get the right productivity and things of that nature, I think has been a learning lesson to businesses. They also need to think then about how they use their current office space. Obviously, if they are expecting people to return to work, then you know, they need to obviously make sure they're COVID-19 compliant.
Yes.
Does that mean that companies rethink about how they use their office space?
Yes.
How often they require people to come into the office? Can they work from home? If they're working from home, what steps have you put in place to make sure that's compliant, because you still have a duty of health and safety in that regard, and just how they plan and use their workforce. The other difficulty, I think, is at the moment, as this lockdown comes,
yes,
and I can experience that in my own business, is that if employees feel that they're in serious and imminent danger by coming to work, for example, because they have to go on public transport, looking at the news last night, I can understand why, then the employer has to be sympathetic to that. And you can't say, well, I don't care, your job is to get in, because there is a sort of section under the Employment Rights Act where if someone is dismissed as a result of that, or they resign in circumstances where the employer has been unreasonable, that could potentially be an automatic unfair dismissal. And there's no 2-year qualifying period for that. And secondly, there's no cap on the compensation. So businesses need to be quite careful about this, and I suspect more and more people will be reticent to have to come back to the office if they're required to do so because of the public transport problem. Now, it's all very well to say walk or use a bike, but, you know, can you imagine everyone wanted to use a bike in the winter when it's pouring with rain and bloody cold? So, you know, I think businesses are going to have to learn to communicate and try to come to the right accommodation which works for both parties.
Absolutely. I think it's also it's interesting because for us, you know, we've always been super flexible. I've never asked people to be in the office, so they can work from where they want. So this didn't really affect us. I'm in this empty office. But what people forget, and tell me if I'm wrong, but is it, if you allow people to work from home, there's also some regulation in terms of providing them, you know, office spaces.
Well, there are a couple of things working from home. First of all, if that's a sort of place of work, it has to be self and compliant, as it were, and the health and safety requirements apply to it. So you need to make sure that they are, you know, got the right chair and they're not exposing themselves to risk. What about their electrics? And the other thing that's very important is working from home is basically security of the company's information. And have you got the right systems in place to protect that information, some of which may be highly confidential? And therefore, there are a number of requirements there, and really employers ought to have a home working policy, which makes clear that people have got to maintain their safety, obviously confidentiality. Sometimes those policies allow the employer to come and inspect the employee's workplace at home to make sure it is compliant. They want to check the electrical equipment and so forth. And also, if they're using company property, such as laptops, computers, printers, etc., then they need to make sure that they are looked after as well.
Yes, good point. Very good point. Very good point. Really good information. We're going to be talking about data protection in another episode. So, but again, as your office was in Chancery Lane, beautiful area. How have you been coping with the situation? What have you put in place?
Well, we haven't been back to our office since the lockdown, if I'm honest. The reason for that is we haven't needed to. We can work from home and support our clients. And it's been quite surprising how easy that is to do, really. We've still got the office there. I am considering whether or not some of us go back to the office, but a lot of my employees do work some way from and would have to use public transport, and they're very reticent to use that at the moment. Bear in mind, you know, it's just getting going again, and they seem to be quite busy, and they're worried about that. So, at the moment, I'm not contemplating going back to the office soon. And the other thing is our office provider, because it's a serviced office, is putting in place various measures and so forth. So we are thinking about what we would need to be COVID compliant, but we probably won't be going back some weeks hence, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, it's so good because you're saving 1 hour of commuting, 2 hours of commuting every day, which is lifesaver.
And, you know, it's not so much, I think the office environment, you can probably sort that out so that, you know, you can social distance and you can wash your hands and have sanitizers and things like that. The problem is getting there. And
Yes.
if someone's got to travel in on trains, tubes, buses, that's where I think there's potential risk. And not everyone was wearing masks yesterday. I looked
Yes.
on the news,
Yes.
and it's very worrying. And I hope we don't have a second spike.
Absolutely, I definitely agree with you. I drive, so so I'm really fully exposed to anything. But I've seen, absolutely right. Nobody wearing masks. I see people on buses. Last question. Obviously, we work together. What have you learned working with Free Colors with regards
Well, I
to
think your branding and marketing is very important, and I think Pavilla and her team are very helpful in that regard. You need to understand how you're projecting yourself in the market, how you are marketing your business, and what brand you have, and therefore, every business at some point in its life will need to think, well, do I need to update my branding and marketing? Does it say the right message?
Yes.
Are people really understanding what we do and what we're about and how we can help them? And certainly your company help with that.
Thank you so much. Tell us, I think you're giving us, so thankful for giving us your time. I know how much, how busy you are. So if people want to reach you and have questions, what is the best way to get in touch with you?
Yes, the best way probably is on our website, www.heinlegal.com. On that website, you'll see some mobile phone numbers. There's my mobile phone number, for example, and I'll be very happy to take a call if I can help you or any of your clients. You know what we do and how we do it from this video. So very happy to help and support in any way we can.
Yes, and I can guarantee you guys, you can trust Nick. He's really, really good. It was so me as well as my call to action. If you really want a brand assessment, just figure out what is probably the opportunities that you are missing out. Check out freecolors.com, and again, we'll be here to answer. We are available. We're here, and again, you can find us as well. You can find me on different social media platforms. And I hope you enjoyed this session. And I will see you very soon for the next episode.